You're going to do some praying for me, boy, and you better pray good.
Deliverance, 20 Weird Facts You Didn't Know. It looked like just another survival thriller. 4 city men, a river to conquer, and a weekend gone wrong. But Deliverance was far stranger and far riskier than anyone expected. A terrifying shoot with no stunt doubles. A banjo duel that became an eerie cultural touchstone. A cast forced into brutal, real-life dangers deep in the wilderness. What was meant to be a tense backwoods drama turned into one of the most unsettling and unforgettable films of its decade, reshaping the genre and haunting audiences for years. But how real were the dangers faced on set? What moments weren't in the script but made it to screen? And what truths about the production remain buried in the Appalachian wilds? Prepare to discover 20 weird facts you didn't know about Deliverance. Weird fact 1. The novel was written by a poet, not a novelist. The strange, haunting tone of Deliverance came from James Dickey, a man better known for poetry than fiction. His 1970 novel wasn't born out of standard storytelling, but out of lyrical, almost dreamlike writing. That's why so many parts of the movie feel eerie and surreal. The source material itself was unconventional. Dickey was fascinated by survival, masculinity, and the clash between civilization and wilderness. When Hollywood adapted his book just 2 years later, they kept much of that unsettling rhythm intact. Audiences expecting a straightforward thriller got something closer to an epic poem drenched in sweat, mud, and violence. In a way, the film wasn't just an adaptation of a book, it was a poem brought to life with screams and banjos. Deliverance wasn't just a thriller, it was a poem turned nightmare, with every scream and banjo note echoing James Dickey's verse. Weird fact 2. The casting almost went to big Hollywood stars. Before the final cast was locked in, the studio wanted big names. Robert Redford, Marlon Brando, and even Charlton Heston were tossed around. Imagine Brando paddling through the rapids, or Redford battling the backwoods locals. But director John Boorman fought for a more believable group of actors. He didn't want glamorous movie stars. He wanted men who looked like they could actually work in an office, then foolishly venture into a river they didn't understand. Burt Reynolds, Jon Voight, Ronnie Cox, and Ned Beatty weren't superstars yet, but their performances grounded the film. Without that authenticity, Deliverance might have turned into a glossy Hollywood adventure. Instead, it felt raw, terrifyingly real, and it made Reynolds a star almost overnight. By skipping Hollywood glamour for raw authenticity, Deliverance became terrifyingly real and turned Burt Reynolds into a star overnight. Weird fact 3. The studio wanted fake rivers, not real danger. Warner Brothers executives panicked when they saw Boorman's production plans. Shooting in the raging rivers of Georgia was reckless. They wanted artificial rapids, controlled tanks, and stunt doubles. But Boorman refused. He insisted the actors paddle real canoes through dangerous waters, believing that only true fear would show on screen. And he was right. The looks of terror weren't acting. The river nearly swallowed the cast multiple times, and equipment was destroyed by the current. But the payoff was authenticity. Viewers could feel the danger in every crash and swirl. By rejecting the studio's demand for safety, Boorman created one of the most viscerally real survival films ever made, though it came frighteningly close to tragedy with every scene. By trading safety for authenticity, Deliverance captured real terror on the river, making survival cinema feel dangerously alive. Weird fact 4. The cast did their own stunts and nearly drowned. There were no stunt doubles in Deliverance. Every harrowing sequence you see, the canoes flipping, the river swallowing them whole, was performed by the actors themselves. Burt Reynolds was thrilled, wanting to prove his toughness, but the risks were staggering. Jon Voight later admitted that some scenes were terrifying enough to make him question signing on at all. Ned Beatty, inexperienced and uncomfortable in the wilderness, was often genuinely panicked. Several times, the river's current nearly dragged them under. The crew kept ropes and safety men nearby, but the actors were still battered, bruised, and exhausted. When you watch the film's wild river scenes, remember, that's not movie magic. It's 4 actors fighting real water that wanted to kill them. Deliverance didn't fake survival. The actors lived it, battling real rivers that left them bruised, battered, and nearly drowned. Weird fact 5. Burt Reynolds' canoe crash was 100% real. One of the film's most shocking stunts comes when Burt Reynolds' character smashes into the rapids and is launched from his canoe. Many assumed it was a stunt double, but Reynolds did it himself. The impact nearly crippled him. His body slammed into rocks, and he crawled out of the river bruised, bloodied, and barely able to stand. When asked later what the stunt looked like on film, Reynolds quipped, "Like I went over Niagara Falls in a barrel, and the barrel lost." It became one of the defining images of the movie and of Reynolds' career. He proved himself as Hollywood's new tough guy, but it came at the cost of injuries that haunted him long after filming. Burt Reynolds' brutal canoe crash wasn't movie magic. It was real pain that cemented him as Hollywood's new tough guy. Weird fact 6. The iconic banjo duel was almost cut. The Dueling Banjos scene is one of the most famous moments in movie history, but it nearly didn't happen. Director John Boorman considered trimming it, fearing audiences would find it too long or strange. Instead, it became the soul of the film, a surreal clash of cultures where city slickers meet backwoods talent. The boy with the banjo wasn't even really playing. A local musician provided the sound. The eerie, joyful yet unsettling tune stuck in people's heads and became a radio hit after the film's release. Without that musical duel, Deliverance would lose its haunting rhythm. It's not just a song, it's the sound of civilization colliding with something raw and untamed. The banjo duel nearly vanished in the edit, but instead it became Deliverance's haunting heartbeat, the sound of two worlds colliding. Weird fact 7. The mountain boy wasn't an actor. The eerie boy in the Dueling Banjos scene wasn't a trained actor at all. His real name was Billy Redden, a Georgia teenager who'd never appeared on camera before. Boorman discovered him locally and cast him for his haunting, unforgettable appearance. Redden didn't actually play the banjo. His hands were manipulated off-screen to match the music. His strange look and expression added an unsettling authenticity Hollywood could never have faked. After the movie, Redden returned to normal life, living quietly, until later making cameo appearances in other films referencing Deliverance. His performance remains one of the most haunting pieces of casting in film history, proof that sometimes the scariest realism comes from non-actors. Billy Redden's haunting presence proved Hollywood didn't need actors for terror. Sometimes raw authenticity is the scariest performance of all. Weird fact 8. Ned Beatty's infamous scene was traumatizing. Ned Beatty's assault scene is one of the most disturbing moments in American cinema. It shocked audiences in 1972 and remains infamous today. But what many don't know is how difficult it was for Beatty himself. The actor had to endure grueling takes, emotional strain, and ridicule afterward. Crew members admitted the set atmosphere was tense, uncomfortable, and deeply unsettling during filming. Beatty later spoke of the stigma. He was teased for years, and some people cruelly associated him with the scene rather than his career achievements. Yet Beatty's bravery in performing such a raw and harrowing moment gave the movie its lasting power. It wasn't just shocking, it was cinema's brutal confrontation with vulnerability and violence. Ned Beatty's harrowing scene scarred him far beyond the set, but his raw bravery gave Deliverance its most haunting power. Weird fact 9. James Dickey, the author, was a nightmare on set. While the novel's author, James Dickey, wrote powerful words, he wasn't exactly easy to work with. Dickey appeared on set as an advisor, but his behavior quickly spiraled into chaos. He clashed with director John Boorman, got drunk, and even broke Boorman's nose in a fistfight. Despite the chaos, Dickey later appeared in the movie as a small cameo, the sheriff in the final scenes. The irony was striking. The man who wrote the story about city men colliding with the wilderness was himself a force of chaos. His presence nearly derailed filming, but his cameo gave him a lasting place in the film's legacy, whether the crew wanted him there or not. James Dickey nearly wrecked the set with chaos, yet his cameo as sheriff sealed his wild spirit into Deliverance's legacy. Weird fact 10. Real locals played the backwoods characters. The terrifying mountain men who haunt the main characters weren't played by polished Hollywood actors. Boorman hired real locals from rural Georgia to fill these roles, believing professionals might not capture the raw, unsettling presence he needed. The result was chilling. Many viewers thought the antagonists were too real, too convincing, and too terrifying to be fictional. Their rugged authenticity made the infamous scenes all the more disturbing, blurring the line between acting and reality. Using locals added a level of realism that big-name stars couldn't replicate. To this day, many say it's what makes Deliverance feel less like a film and more like a disturbing encounter you're forced to witness. By casting real locals instead of polished actors, Deliverance blurred fiction with reality, making its terror feel uncomfortably real. Weird fact 11. The shoot was so dangerous, no insurance would cover it. Hollywood productions usually carry hefty insurance to protect cast and crew, but Deliverance was so reckless, no company wanted the risk. The actors had to perform their own stunts in raging rivers, climbing cliffs, and navigating rapids without doubles or guarantees. Burt Reynolds joked that they risked their lives for scale pay and bad sandwiches. One wrong move in those waters could have killed someone, and several near misses proved how dangerous it was. The lack of insurance forced everyone to push forward carefully, but also recklessly, knowing if disaster struck, they were on their own. It was filmmaking at its rawest, dangerous, unfiltered, and frighteningly real. With no insurance to shield them, Deliverance became filmmaking at its rawest, reckless, dangerous, and terrifyingly real. Weird fact 12. Burt Reynolds' injuries haunted him for life. Reynolds wanted authenticity, so he insisted on doing his own stunts. That dedication nearly cost him dearly when he was hurled from a canoe into raging rapids. He was slammed against rocks, badly injuring his back and tailbone. At first, he laughed it off, but years later, Reynolds admitted that the damage lingered for decades. His spine and knees never fully recovered, and he felt the pain long after the film wrapped. Still, Reynolds claimed he wouldn't change a thing. The risk, he believed, made the movie legendary, but his scars were proof that Deliverance demanded more from its cast than most Hollywood films ever would. It wasn't acting, it was survival on screen. Burt Reynolds carried the scars of Deliverance for life, proof that its raw authenticity came with a brutal price. Weird fact 13. The townsfolk sued the filmmakers. Afterward, the small Georgia communities that hosted Deliverance were both fascinated and horrified by the production. After release, some locals believed the film painted them as grotesque hillbillies, fueling stereotypes that lingered for decades. A group even tried to sue the filmmakers, claiming defamation and reputational harm. Though the lawsuit didn't succeed, the anger was real. For some, the movie was less an artistic triumph and more an insult to their culture. Tourism may have boomed thanks to the film, but resentment simmered beneath the surface. The irony? Without the cooperation of those same locals, the movie couldn't have been made. Hollywood left scars in Georgia, scars that ran deeper than the river itself. Deliverance left Georgia with fame and scars, as locals saw Hollywood's triumph as their lasting insult. Weird fact 14. A real dead body was used for the river scene. In one of the film's most unsettling sequences, the body of a murdered character floats eerily in the water. But what most audiences didn't realize is that the production used a real corpse, at least for one shot. A cadaver from a local medical school was borrowed to achieve maximum realism. While it added chilling authenticity, the decision sparked controversy and disgust among some crew members who found it disturbing. Today, such a practice would be unthinkable in mainstream filmmaking, but in 1972, boundaries were blurred in pursuit of realism. It gave the film its grim texture, though it also left behind one of the strangest, darkest trivia bits in Hollywood history. Deliverance blurred morality for realism, using a real corpse to etch one of Hollywood's darkest and most unsettling trivia tales. Weird fact 15. The film nearly got an X rating. When Deliverance was first submitted to the ratings board, its brutal violence and harrowing sexual assault scene pushed it dangerously close to an X rating, the kiss of death for mainstream cinema. An X would have killed the film's box office potential. Borman and the studio had to argue fiercely, trimming shots and softening some sequences to bring it down to an R. The debate highlighted how shocking the material was for its time, breaking boundaries in ways audiences weren't prepared for. Ironically, the controversy only fueled the film's success, as viewers flocked to see the forbidden movie. Deliverance danced on the edge of censorship, and that razor's edge made it unforgettable. Deliverance walked the razor's edge of censorship, dodging an X rating to become one of cinema's most unforgettable shocks. Weird fact 16. The budget was tiny compared to its success. Deliverance wasn't a lavish studio gamble. It was shot on a shoestring budget of just $2 million. For perspective, that was peanuts, even in the early 70s. Yet the film went on to gross more than $46 million at the box office, making it one of the most profitable films of the decade. The modest budget forced the filmmakers into risky choices: no stunts, minimal special effects, and raw locations instead of Hollywood sets. Ironically, those very constraints gave the movie its gritty power. In chasing authenticity on a budget, they created a survival thriller that looked and felt frighteningly real. Sometimes, low resources don't kill a film, they make it legendary. Deliverance turned a $2 million gamble into a $46 million triumph, proving grit and danger can outshine Hollywood gloss. Weird fact 17. Dueling Banjos became a Billboard hit. What began as an odd little interlude in the movie exploded into a cultural phenomenon. Dueling Banjos, performed on screen between Drew and the Mountain Boy, became a chart-topping single. Released after the film's debut, the tune shot up the Billboard Hot 100, reaching number 2 in 1973. Radio stations couldn't stop playing it, and suddenly, the haunting Appalachian duel was everywhere, from jukeboxes to commercials. The strange twist? The song had actually existed years earlier, and its composer had to sue for proper credit after Deliverance popularized it. The result was one of the weirdest legacies in movie music, a tune tied forever to tension, fear, and a banjo that never seems to stop playing. Dueling Banjos leapt from the screen to the charts, turning a tense backwoods duel into a Billboard sensation. Weird fact 18. The film boosted Georgia tourism, but also scared visitors. After Deliverance hit theaters, Georgia's Chattooga River, where most of the movie was filmed, became a tourist magnet. Adventurers from all over came to raft the rapids, inspired by the film's wild landscapes. Ironically, many of those same visitors also admitted being terrified, carrying the movie's dark associations into their trips. The river became a paradox, a place of beauty and excitement, but also dread. Locals capitalized on the new attention with guided tours, while others grew tired of their home being linked with violence and stereotypes. In the end, Deliverance gave Georgia a tourism boom, but one forever haunted by the film's unsettling shadow. The river was never just water again, it was legend. Deliverance turned the Chattooga River into both a tourist magnet and a haunted landmark, forever shadowed by its dark legend. Weird fact 19. Some locals still hate the movie to this day. For some in Georgia, Deliverance wasn't just a film, it was a stigma. Decades after its release, certain locals still express resentment over how it portrayed backwoods communities. Many feel it cemented unfair stereotypes of rural people as violent, backward, or grotesque. While the movie elevated the region's profile, it also left a cultural scar that lingers in small towns. Even today, residents occasionally bristle when outsiders bring up the film. The irony is that the authenticity of the locals was key to the film's impact. Yet in the long run, it wasn't just a cinematic triumph. It was a reputation-altering event for real communities who never asked to be immortalized that way. For Georgia locals, Deliverance remains less a classic and more a lasting curse, a film that etched stereotypes they never asked to bear. Weird fact 20. Deliverance is preserved in the National Film Registry. Despite the controversy, the lawsuits, and the trauma left behind, Deliverance carved itself into film history. In 2008, the Library of Congress added it to the National Film Registry, cementing it as culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Few films manage such a legacy, especially one so raw, unsettling, and divisive. Its preservation means it will never fade away. It will always be studied, debated, and remembered. For better or worse, Deliverance changed the face of American cinema. What began as a modest thriller about four men in the wilderness became an immortal work that still challenges, shocks, and unsettles audiences more than 50 years later. Deliverance is now immortal, preserved in the National Film Registry as a film that shocks, unsettles, and refuses to fade away. Deliverance wasn't just a thriller, it was a gamble, an experiment in raw fear and survival that nearly broke the men who made it. But its survival turned it into something greater, a haunting classic that still unsettles audiences decades later. Maybe that's why it never leaves us, because it proves that even terror can carve legends. If this uncovered a side of Deliverance you didn't know, share your favorite weird fact in the comments. And make sure to like and subscribe for more untold stories from the films that refuse to die. Remember, the river never truly ends.